welcome to the second stream and the second slot in our stream, FinTech offerings and technological developments. These are often the burden for a German-speaking lady with the English language. So I'm happy to announce now Richard Mundell. He's our Chief Product Officer at TRG Screen. And I will not say so much more. So he has prepared a super presentation and he will give you some more, let me check, some more insights how to optimize your market data spend. So Richard, it's your stage.
Thank you, Anya. Good morning, everybody. As Anya said, I'm Richard Mundell. I'm the Chief Product Officer at TRG Screen. It's awesome to be back presenting to a live audience after about 2 years of doing this to a webcam, not really knowing if there was anybody on the other end of it. This time last year, DKF was virtual, and I presented I gave a presentation themed around the 2003 movie, The Core. Aaron Eckhart, Hilary Swank movie. Great actors. Absolutely terrible movie that is never going to be on anybody's top 10 list. So I thought I'd go for a better movie for today, for the theme. And can anybody guess what that movie might be? Go on, we're going to have some audience participation here. Yeah, exactly. There we go. Thank you. There is somebody out there. Slightly more interactive than presenting to the webcam. Yes, the 1999 Keanu Reeves movie, The Matrix. And can you believe that's pre-millennium? That makes me feel very, very old. So who's watched The Matrix? Who's watched the film The Matrix? Great, okay. Who hasn't watched the film The Matrix? Okay. Well, that's going to be interesting for you guys then. So around this tenuous theme, I'm going to be talking about how much market data there is out there, not in The Matrix, but in the real world. What a market data spend management system is, and if you don't have one, that might be helpful. And the optimization opportunities it gives you, and then we're also going to introduce the concept of insights, all very tenuously themed around the movie The Matrix. Now, in the film, this is The Matrix. This is the source code of The Matrix. To normal humans, obviously, it's a jumble of symbols and numbers that's incomprehensible. And to Neo, which is for those of you who haven't watched it, is the Keanu Reeves character, the hero. He has special powers in order to read it. So this jumble of symbols and numbers is what's inspired the topic today, because this reminds me of market data spend management, that you have all of this data about your subscriptions, but actually getting meaning and insights from it is incredibly difficult. And that's the thing, is having all that data about your subscriptions is wonderful, but unless you can get actionable information and actionable insight from that to help you optimize your spend, then it might as well just be looking at the matrix. Now, of course, you might not have a spend management system, in which case, and this is where my matrix is glitching here because my little animation isn't going. There we go, get the animation going. If you don't have a spend management system, you don't even have the matrix. You just have this, at best, a screen full of static. And if you aren't managing your market data in a purpose-built market data spend management system, you are taking on a lot of financial risk because there is an awful lot of market data out there, as I'm sure you all know, because here we are at a conference dedicated to financial information and market data. So there's a nice big number there on screen, 35 billion US dollars. Anybody know what that number is? That might be familiar if you read industry press. That is the amount of market data out there that's been sold into the industry in the last year. And that's sourced from the very well-respected, very well-known Burton Taylor report, where they survey the industry to understand how much market data and financial information it is. That is a huge, huge amount of money being spent on financial information. So, and it's growing. It's growing every year. It grows. Every year we think as market data professionals, oh, maybe we can cut down those costs a bit. No. The need for data is insatiable from your businesses, and that is growing year on year. A huge amount of growth post-pandemic, or as we emerge from the pandemic at least. So here's another number, 45.6%. Now that's also a really, really interesting number, and that's sourced from us. And that is what we estimate is the proportion of that 35 billion US dollars that is actually being managed in a market data spend management system. So think about that. Less than half of that huge amount of money on subscriptions is actually being professionally managed in a market data spend management system, leaving over 16 billion of market data that is being managed other ways. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's fine. I don't have a market data spend management system. I've got Ariba, or I've got Coupa, or I've got iValuer, or I've got an AP system, or a contract management system, or I've kind of shoved this into ServiceNow, or, oh, I'm using Excel for this. I really hope you're not using Excel for this. And those systems, maybe apart from Excel, are great for general spend, general simple subscriptions. But market data is a very, very complicated beast. We obviously know how important it is. Again, we're here at a conference dedicated to this topic. But there's the multi-vendor nature of market data makes managing the commercials and the spend on it incredibly complex. You can have a service originating from one vendor that's delivered over another vendor's market data platform, maybe even over a third vendor's actual data feed that's built by a fourth vendor, and you're contracted under a fifth vendor, or some combination of those. And generic spend management systems just can't handle that complexity, nor can they handle the fact that contracts don't just cover a simple service that's just going to be flat allocated to a handful of users, that there are individual services that are being delivered over multiple different mechanisms, which makes the commercial arrangements very complex as well. So those generic systems really just don't cut it. So there's a reason why I picked those two colors. For those of you who've seen The Matrix, you completely understand this visual, where our hero Neo is given a choice early on the movie of whether to take the blue pill or the red pill. The blue pill allows him to return oblivious into the Matrix, unaware that there's 16 billion that he's not, well, okay, that's not the Matrix, but there's oblivious to the fact he's trapped in the Matrix. But the blue pill frees him from the Matrix and allows him to see how deep the rabbit hole goes. So yeah, if you're sucking on that blue pill right now because you're part of that 16 billion that you're not using a purpose-built spend management system for, you might want to spit that blue pill out and go with the red pill instead and start professionally managing your market data. So if you're going to take that red pill for the first time, let me explain what a market data spend management system is. Now, I can see here there are some people here that, my customers right now who already have a solution. So bear with me on this, but there's many of you here who I'm sure don't currently have a solution, and this would be useful to understand what these things do, why they are different to generic things or just using spreadsheets. So the first key input into a market data spend management system is your contracts. But as I was explaining earlier, this is not just a basic, I have a contract from this date to that date for this value. Obviously, that's an important part of the contract, but it's also the terms. Which services are being delivered on that contract, over which delivery platforms, how is that being billed to you? Picking up from what Steve Acey was saying in the previous meeting, what are the usage rights? How are you allowed to use that data? Which business units are covered from that? Again, all of these complexities that are fairly unique to the market data world that other spend management systems for other expense categories don't have to deal with because they're not market data. The other really, really key input is your people. Having a feed coming in from your HR system that says who in your organization is going to be consuming market data in which departments, which cost centers. And then simply you bring those two things together and that allows you to track an inventory of exactly who has what market data within your organization. And then armed with that information, as the vendor invoices roll in, you can actually not only check your invoicing is correct, you can actually make sure, you can actually predict the vendor invoicing before it even comes in and know down to the line item, down to the lowest level of detail, exactly what a vendor should be billing me. Because when you're dealing with, okay, no one firm here has $16 billion of market data, or if you do, and you don't have a system, that's impressive. But it's going to be tens of millions. Even for the smallest of firms, it's tens of millions of dollars or euros you're spending on market data. For the larger firms, it's upwards of $500 million US every year. So even the smallest percentage mistake made, out of no malice by a vendor, that soon adds up if you're not keeping them honest and billing you correctly. Then the other key thing here is making sure that all of your user requests, your orders are flowing through here as well. Because market data isn't static. It's constantly being added to, removed as you have people join your organization, people leave your organization, new informational needs coming up. Financial professionals want as much data as possible. There's always new requests. So by flowing that through your spend management system, you are staying on track of exactly what you've got over time, making sure that you always have a clear picture. And then two key outputs coming out of this is financial allocations. So you know what you've got, you know what you're being invoiced, to make sure that you can drive those financial allocations back to your business. And you're not just saying, oh, I had an invoice from Bloomberg, I'm just going to charge that to some cost center with no idea who's using it. You can actually charge back each individual service back to the business users so it appears on your business line's P&L, so their direct cost of them information subscriptions is being offset against their revenues. Also, budgeting as well, other key financial practice here, making sure that you're able to budget and stay within your budgets and market data. And the other output here, a really important output here, I'm going to generously call reports, but this is the data, this is the matrixy bit, and we're going to get back to that in a minute. So this isn't intended to be a deep dive on spend management systems, but that's intended to be a flavor for those of you who don't have a system already of what these things do. And to give you an idea of a few high-level advantages, again, I work for a company that makes a system that does this, so I could wax lyrical for hours about every little tweak, every little feature that would add some value to your businesses. But just to talk about some of the real key low-hanging fruit. So, for instance, if you're feeding in your HR information into this, when somebody leaves the firm, oh, we can identify, look, that user had a subscription or some subscriptions, and you can shut that off and save money. And it seems so basic. But if you're using, say, Ariba, and no offense to Ariba here, if you're using Ariba for that, Ariba might know that you've spent $3 million with Refinitiv this month. It won't know who the individual users are. Whereas a spend management system for market data will tell you exactly that. You can shut that subscription off. Contract renewals. Again, knowing when your contracts are up for renewal before they automatically roll is great. I mean, I'm a vendor. I love an automatically rolling contract that I've been unaware that it's renewed until it's renewed with an automatic price rise kicking in. Awesome. But as you're responsible for managing your firm's spend, you don't want to let that happen. You want to know well ahead of that contract renewing, making sure that you're taking that opportunity to renegotiate a fit-for-purpose deal with that vendor before it auto-rolls. Duplicated services. Obviously, you don't want these sorts of duplicates. Lots of duplicate Agent Smiths is a very bad thing if you've watched the movie. But again, it's something that's very unique to market data management, is the concept of get the same user having the same service, normally an exchange service, multiple times on multiple different pieces of market data. Again, no other expense category really has that. I mean, if you're also looking, some of you I know also look after software subscriptions. Nobody has 2 Salesforce logins. If you've got Salesforce, you've got it once. But for market data, you can easily have the same feed coming in multiple ways, and you either want to be shutting that off and saving the money, or making sure that you're claiming the credits back so you're not paying for all of those duplicates. User surveying is also a great thing. If you know exactly what you've got and you know when your contracts are up for renewal, that allows you to actually get feedback from your users to feed into the contract renewal process, because actually that's really powerful. Often a vendor will listen more to the feedback from users, and users aren't always happy. If you survey them, you can often get a very mixed bag of feedback and use that to your advantage in your vendor negotiations. I told you it was going to be tenuous about the matrix. And one other thing before I move on is also general compliance risk as well. I talked about being able to track your usage rights for contracts, making sure that only the departments licensed for something are the only people who are actually using that and being permission for that data is really key. Also, you will all have exchange data flowing into your organizations, which have very complex rules about how you count the number of user accesses and declare it, because you want to keep those exchange auditors happy, because you never know when they're going to come knocking on the door wanting to check to see if you really have declared correctly and you really are using your data correctly. I'm assuming exchange auditors look like that. It's just a random clip. Sorry if there's any exchange auditors in the house. So that's not exhaustive. It's a few key things, but ultimately, and this is now where we get onto kind of the insights piece of this, all the data ends up here in, as I say, what I generously was describing as reporting. It's not really reporting. It's a great big matrixy bucket of data. Now, I watched all 4 Matrix movies recently to try and find a scene that had a bucket in it. And I'm very disappointed to say there are no buckets in the Matrix. So I Googled it, and I found there's a fishing bucket that has the Matrix printed on the side of it. So here is my Matrix bucket full of all of my market data subscription information. And yeah, what's in that bucket? Yeah, you guessed it. It's incomprehensible, vast reams of data that you now need to make sense of to try and optimize your spend. Of course, it doesn't look like that. It looks like this. And my little video autoplays are glitching, but it looks like this, possibly. A great, big, long report with every single line item subscription that you have in your organization. It's great data to have, and you don't have that data if you don't have a spend management system, but that is very, very hard to get a picture from. Or it might not even look as nice as that. It might look like this great big spreadsheet, because everybody in market data management, their primary skill is spreadsheets. It shouldn't be that way, but that is how it is. So, how do we go from this market data subscription matrix to being able to understand what's going on? Well, in the matrix, in order to interact with it, our heroes get plugged into it. Now, I'm not a big fan of having a big probe stuck in the back of my head just to understand my market data costs. So we need to evolve without the great big metal thing in the back of our heads. So there's no, unfortunately, no evolution of mankind image from the matrix, so I've made my own one to kind of talk about where we are now and where we need to get to. So these are kind of the levels of evolution, and data is very much where a lot of us live in the market data management world right now. Data is essentially all that raw data on your users, your subscriptions, your usage, your commercials, your invoicing, your budgets, your allocations, probably in Excel somewhere, or at least you've extracted that if you have a spend management system into a great big Excel sheet. The next level of evolution, and it's only a slight level of evolution, is to reports. It's assembling that into at least some formatted, grouped, page-based reports. And that generally is where market data management has been stuck for the last 20 years. Now, some tooling does at least get to this next stage where we've got analytics, where we have at least our first tool here, where it's going to give you some functionality where you can slice and dice the data and try and answer your own questions. So it's essentially not much of a step up from an Excel pivot table, but some market data platforms out there do at least give you that level of analytics where you can start to play with the data, start to try and understand what's going on. But what we want to do is evolve to insights, which is market data manager on the right with the big stick of insights over his shoulder, which is having your spend management platform give you a narrative of what's going on, telling you the story of your market data landscape, giving you kind of that aha light bulb moment of, I could optimize that, where it's actually giving you the answers to your questions out of the box, rather than you having to manipulate the data, trying to muddle your way through it. So again, as I say, most of us kind of have been stuck there for a very, very long time, but insights is where we really need to evolve to. And you might think, okay, well, how does an insight really differ from just some analytics or some data or a chart? So let me give you a worked example. Now, it's a deliberately simple worked example, but this could give you a flavor of what I'm talking about here when it comes to insights. So some raw data here. We're starting with data, we're evolving to insights. In 2020, I spent 10.6 million euros on market data in my firm. The following year, I spent just over 3 million euros more. So on the face of it, it's like, oh, my costs have gone up a lot. That's not good. But it's not very insightful. It's just telling me, wow, my costs have increased a bunch. Now, as I start to evolve, okay, I can make this into a report or a simple visualization. Well, that's not telling me a lot more. The line's going in the wrong direction, right? And that's not going to be something I'm going to be very proud of telling my boss or my business lines that, our costs have gone up 3 million euros and I don't know why. So, but when we start to dive into this data and start to be more insightful about it, so this is maybe the analytics stage of evolution here, where I can slice and dice the data and say, you know what, I'm going to introduce into this information about the vendors. And in this example here, we can see that actually it's not everything that's gone up in price. It's one particular vendor, vendor X. Deliberately haven't named the vendor, but you can guess any vendor that might have wanted to whack up your prices 3 million euros in a year. So at least we can say, okay, this is not a general problem. It's one vendor that's gone up, but again, you still don't know why. The analytics have only gotten you so far. But now this is what we want to evolve to, is insights, understanding the system telling you why your costs are going up. And that's where we can start to introduce here the concept of actually an analysis of the changes in this case of, okay, well, my costs have changed between these 2 years because I've added some things, some prices have changed with the vendor, and I've cancelled some things. And you can start to see, well, actually, you know what, my adds and my cancels are pretty much netted out. And actually, the vast amount of this is actually vendor price changes. But again, we still don't know why. And for to reach the final level of evolution here, we can really analyze the data using AI, machine learning, and just using the data in a smart way to be insightful, to actually say, well, you know what, I've added a bunch of new terminals to the organization because we added a new business line. And of course, we had the regular new joiners as you get throughout the year. But when it comes to that whopping great big price change, well, actually, I had to add a new license to cover that new business line. And the rest of it, well, we did have a price increase, but guess what? I negotiated a less than CPI price increase because I'm a really good contract negotiator. And within those cancels, well, you know what? I proactively detected all of the terminals from that vendor that weren't being used, and I've shut them off. And I've also, again, the basic low-hanging fruit, I've identified people who were leaving my firm and shut off the terminals for the leavers. So now, all of a sudden, we've gone from a picture that showed, oh, crap, our costs have gone up 3 million, that's really not good, to actually a really much more interesting picture here, where we can have what we call a narrative insight, a description of that, saying, well, look, our costs have gone up 3 million, but it's because we added terminals and a new license for our new trading business line, and actually we offset a lot of those increases by proactively shutting off terminals we weren't using and market data for leavers. So now we've evolved from raw data that wasn't telling us a story to an insight that is actually telling us exactly what has gone on with this overall cost increase in the last year. So with our data, we've evolved into insights, and we're getting that much clearer picture. So we know that the matrix no longer looks like this to us. It now looks like this, where actually we've got a nice picture of actually what's going on in our landscape. And even better, those exchange auditors are at the end of the corridor and they're not running towards us anymore. So that's got to be a good thing. But let's not tempt fate there and let's move swiftly on. So how do we escape the matrix to the wonderful real world of insights? Yeah, it's not getting less tenuous, is it? In the movie, Neo, our hero, was rescued by the crew of the hovercraft Nebuchadnezzar. And that's how he got out of the matrix. Actually, in the real world, yeah, there's no hovercraft to pull us away from not understanding what's going on with our spend. It's about us, you as customers, and us as market data spend management vendors, evolving, insisting from your vendors that they're actually not just providing you all that raw data. The raw data is great, but it needs to be insightful. It needs to be telling you a story, and it needs to be taking you kind of into the sunset of the real world. And this is all about moving from buckets of data and giving just some tools to sift through that data to dashboards and visualizations tailored to your informational needs, telling you a story, answering your questions without you having to manipulate the data to answer the questions yourself. Trend analysis, commentary, highlighting of outliers. This is where we need to be evolving to as an industry that is responsible for managing that $36 billion of market data spend. So, in conclusion, first of all, if you're sat there thinking I'm part of that world that has $16 billion of spend that isn't being managed anywhere, well, I would strongly urge you, not just as a market data spend management vendor, but I would strongly urge you that you want to get a system, be that ours or somebody else's, to manage that proactively, because otherwise it's just a huge, great big number that you've got no control over. And if you do have one, well, congratulations if you've already taken the red pill. But are you and your team sifting buckets and buckets of data, trying to make sense of the matrix? Or are you getting those actionable insights straight out of the box so you're not having to be a data analyst, but you're concentrating on adding value to your business by optimizing your spend? So just to wrap up, a really quick 60 seconds on us at TRG Screen. You'll be very unsurprised to hear that we offer comprehensive spend management solutions for market data that span from spend to usage to inquiry to compliance. And at the heart of our offering is insights, which is bringing you all of that great stuff about insights. So you've got that actionable business intelligence coming to you, spotting optimization opportunities for you to take advantage of, so you don't have to sift all of that data yourself. And if you're thinking, that's great, but I really don't have time, or I don't have any team dedicated to this to manage my market data, well, we can also wrap that in a full, all bespoke, or partial managed service. And I think those session that Anya shared a couple of sessions ago talked about a lot of that as well. So it doesn't mean that you have to suddenly take on the burden of managing a whole bunch of software. We can provide a managed service where the cost savings you're likely to get out of that more than outweigh the actual cost of the managed service itself. And this is all provided as part of our brand new optimized platform that we brought to market last year. So if you're interested in more information, please don't hesitate to stop by the booth. And also, if you've never seen the Matrix before and you would like to see it now based on the small clips that I've shoehorned into my presentation, we have a whole load of DVDs that we can give out to you at the booth as well in return for seeing a demo. Thank you very much.
So thanks, Richard, for this insightful, powerful matrix moment. Yeah, okay, we have...
Any questions?
Sorry, I was too fast. Yeah.
Richard, could you explain what those funny numbers and symbols mean?
You want my fun matrix fact, which is those are actually Japanese sushi recipes. It's what they used, it's what the production designers used on the Matrix to make the Matrix. So yes, so if you're sat there thinking, I fancy some raw fish, it's that. It's subliminal.
Okay, are there more questions to be put out?
No. Okay.
Thanks
Thank you very
for
much,
this.
everybody.
Great.